We all know what a burden guilt can be. We can literally feel it in our shoulders. It can actually cause us to walk hunched over. No wonder the Bible sometimes speaks of sin as a weight. Of course, it is not an actual physical weight, but the metaphor of sin as a burden or weight certainly feels right. So, how can we get rid of the burden of sin and guilt that weighs us so heavily? Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. In the book of Leviticus, which I suspect most of us almost never read, there is a curious instruction for the priests. Now, much of Leviticus is taken up with detailed instructions for ritual sacrifices and rites to be performed to atone for both individual and communal sins. Most of them involve killing an animal, but there is actually one where the animal lives, or one of the animals anyway. It is part of the ritual on the annual Day of Atonement, what we now refer to as Yom Kippur. After sacrificing a bull, 2 goats were to be brought to Aaron. Aaron was to cast lots to determine the fate of each goat. One would be sacrificed, but the fate of the other was very different. We read, "Aaron shall cast lots on the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord, and the other lot for Azazel. Aaron shall present the goat on which the lot fell for the Lord, and offer it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement over it, that it may be sent away into the wilderness to Azazel." Azazel was apparently believed to be a fallen angel who lived in the wilderness apart from God, a demonic spirit who needed to be appeased. The passage from Leviticus continues, "When he has finished atoning for the holy place and the tent of meeting and the altar, he shall present the live goat. Then Aaron shall lay both of his hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the iniquities of the people of Israel and all their transgressions, all their sins, putting them on the head of the goat and sending it away into the wilderness by means of someone designated for the task. The goat shall bear on itself all their iniquities to a barren region, and the goat shall be set free in the wilderness." Fascinating. The job of the goat was to carry the sins of the people away. He bore their sins on his own head and was taken into the wilderness, the place where God was considered not to be present, at least at that time. It was a very visible use of metaphorical language to describe how the sins of people were removed from them. If sin is a weight, a burden, then something or someone else can assume the burden and bear it away. We see this metaphor at work very powerfully in the story of the suffering of Christ, for example. The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke record a man named Cyrus of Cyrene being tasked with carrying the cross for Jesus. But the Gospel of John tells a very different story, and one which makes me wonder whether this is a metaphor of sin as burden could be borne by someone else was in the writer's mind when he wrote these words. "So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross by himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. There they crucified him." That Jesus suffered and was crucified for us and for our sins is central to our faith. I really think that what we see in this brief passage, so different from the other gospel accounts as to be remarkable, is Jesus acting as the goat on whose head the burden of the sins of Israel had been placed and sent away. It's a powerful image, a powerful metaphor. The prophet Isaiah also uses this metaphor in one of his 4 suffering servant passages to describe how the servant bears the weight of sin for us. We read, "Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried our diseases. Yet we accounted him as stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. So let me finish with this passage from Hebrews that reminds us that with the burden of sin lifted, we can now be like runners, no longer weighed down with heavy burdens. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. If sin is a burden that weighs us down, then it turns out God has provided us the means to let go of that burden, to let them be carried by someone else. Tomorrow, another metaphor for sin, one we use in a whole variety of ways. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.